Attention, you're listening to The Todd Huff Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk and education. Be advised, the content of this program has been documented to prevent and even cure liberalism, and listening may cause you to lean to the right. And now, coming to you from the Full Suite Wealth Studios, here's your conservative but not bitter host, Todd Huff.
All right, my friends, yesterday we spent some time talking about the Supreme Court decision. Today, we're going to spend some time talking about the additional fallout, the potential fallout of other racially based congressional districts in America, because the Department of Justice is now asking for this to be applied nationwide instead of simply in Louisiana. And this is going to present massive problems for the Democrat Party. I want to get into this today. I also want to get into an interview I saw TMZ do with AOC, where she speculated that America may have already had its first gay president, which reminds me of something I've said on this program. Of course, in a satirical way, in a hyperbolic way, but nonetheless, the left says stuff again that's I just want to share that. There's other things in the news that I would like to get to as well, time permitting. I appreciate you being here. If you want to be part of the conversation, you can always text us here. 317-785-1030, 317-785-1030. Thoughts, questions, feedback, anything pertaining to what's going on in your mind as you read the news, listen to this program. Of course, be sure to accompany those questions with the appropriate amounts of adoration and praise. And who knows, my friends, you may find your message read right here on this program. I'm kidding, not kidding about the adoration and praise portion, but it's good to be here on this Friday. It is hard to believe. The 1st of May, May Day, 2026. Man, it is time. I tell you, you know that time goes fast, but it just seems the older that I get, the more seasoned that I become, that time seems to speed up even more. It's a remarkable thing, but it's good to be here. Thank you for tuning in and joining us here today. My friends, if you're dealing with discomfort or you're just tired of living off of prescriptions and managing their side effects, you are not alone. A lot of folks are looking for something natural they can trust. That's why I want you to check out Christopher's Organic Botanicals, a family-run Kratom company rooted in truth, tradition, and transparency. They partner directly with farmers in Indonesia. They lab test everything before it ever reaches your hands. There is no hype. They don't create synthetics, and they don't engage in funny business. They just provide the real thing done right. Real Kratom, my friends, is tested. It's responsibly sourced. It's not the synthetic garbage that often leads to horror stories. Those synthetics, of course, coupled with the shady sellers out there, lead to the headlines that you read about Kratom and its dangers and so forth. But it doesn't have to be that way. But don't take my word for it. Do your own research. And once you decide that this is something that makes sense for you, you can start with their Kratom Starter Pack. Coupon code Todd Huff will save you 10% on your first order. Christopher'sOrganicBotanicals.com. Christopher'sOrganicBotanicals.com. Truth, tradition, transparency. Okay, I want to start here today. By reading a bit from an article that I found, I think, on Bongino Report. This is written at the Epic Times, and let's jump right into this. It says DOJ seeks nationwide enforcement of Supreme Court's ruling on Voting Rights Act. The Supreme Court on April 29th, that would have been Wednesday, struck down a map creating a second black majority congressional district in Louisiana. So, we talked about the case yesterday, the the decision, what went into it, a little bit about why race-based districts is by definition a racist thing to do. Whatever group is seeking to benefit from these districts, the Supreme Court said you can't use it as the primary methodology for determining your district. Political boundaries are fine, but to select a district simply by race is crossing a line that is not allowed by the Constitution. Let's get into this. The U.S. Department of Justice is working to enforce nationwide the Supreme Court's ruling in Louisiana versus Calais, which limited the use of race in redistricting under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. In a 6-3 decision on April 29th, the Supreme Court struck down a map that gave Louisiana a second black majority congressional district, ruling it an unconstitutional racial gerrymandering, even though the map was intended to comply with Section 2 of the 1965 Federal Voting Rights Act. Louisiana was just trying to follow the rules as the courts had told them the rules were, by the way. This is me talking, not the article. So, again, we went through this. We went through and then we said, they only had one majority black district, and the allegation was you needed a second because you have approximately 33%, approximately 33% of your population, Louisiana, is black. Therefore, we need 1/3 of your districts to be black majority districts, and so that means you have 6 districts. 2 of those need to be black majority. That started this whole snowball. And now, through the events that happened, the courts were telling them the opposite is true. And the Supreme Court ruled with the court that said you can't be using race as the primary factor in these things. Section 2, going back to the article here, prohibits voting practices or procedures that discriminate based on race, color, or membership in a large language minority group, such as American Indian, Asian American, Alaskan Native, or American Hispanic. By the way, this says American Indian. You know that sometimes there's the boxes you check that's Native American. And I remember Rush talking about this on his program years ago. He said he had a friend, who when he would go to the doctor and they give you the papers to fill out, and of course in those papers include little boxes typically that say I'm one of these things, or I'm not any of these things. I'm Caucasian, I'm black, I'm African, or American Indian, Asian American, Alaskan Native, American Hispanic, whatever the check boxes are. And he said his friend always marked that he was Native American, even though he wasn't in the true common definition of the word. But he said, listen, I am Native American. I am a Native American. I am from here. I am here legally. I was born here. I am native to America. Therefore, I am Native American. So just interesting thoughts on how we classify ourselves and all that, especially based upon race and so forth. A lot of these folks want to keep these differences alive and at the forefront of everyone's thinking. I absolutely understand that there are racists out there. There will always be racists out there. I'm not here to excuse that. But the human heart is full of wickedness, and it's wicked to hate a group of people or a person because of his or her racial or ethnic identity and so forth. And there's always going to be people that do this. It is much less common today, at least as it comes from state policy, or, well, it doesn't find itself in U.S. law in the same sense, where we have throughout history in this country had laws on the books that were also inherently and absolutely racist. It wasn't a question of interpretation on anything. These laws were outright racist. It was racist to have chattel slavery in this republic. It was racist, the laws of segregation that allowed blacks or forced blacks to use different drinking fountains and all that ridiculous nonsense. We don't have that today. This country has rectified those mistakes, those errors, those sins, those evils. This nation has rectified those. And we should be able to recognize that while at the same time recognizing that there are and always will be racists among us. There's going to be any group, whatever. I'm not just saying racist. There's going to be sexists among us. There's going to be people who hate Christians among us. There's going to be people who hate any group of people, anti-Semites among us. That doesn't excuse that they exist or that they behave the way that they do, or that we condone the hatred. It simply acknowledges a reality. This is the condition of the heart of humanity. It's why, by the way, God came. God sent his son to redeem us, to restore us, to give us. The Bible says that God makes us a new creation when he comes into our lives. It's a remarkable thing. God basically said, look, you cannot make it to me on your own. Let me fix it. Let me fix it. I'm going to make you more like me. I'm going to transform your heart from the inside out. That's what I'm going to do through my Spirit. And that's what God does, or is trying to do, with his children, those who have accepted him. Hopefully we all comply and we all accept his lordship. Sometimes it's painful, the things that he has to change in our lives. But outside of massive worldwide revival happening, the reality is that there will always be racists and all those other groups of people that I just mentioned, and the ones I haven't mentioned. They'll be among us. There's no doubt about this. But there's a group of people that benefit. You can call them whatever you want to call them. There are people that keep this fight alive, these tensions high, because they can politically use it, or sometimes they can use it to personally enrich themselves. These are the folks who are in the race-based business. They need there to be this tension between the races. It allows them to fund their racially based groups or nonprofits or whatever they are, to run their race-based business, to keep this tension high. And it's not healthy. It's not good. We should seek ways to break down these walls, but politicians use this as well. They cause one group to believe another group is responsible. This isn't just race-based, by the way. This is also based upon our socioeconomic position. Again, I don't like talking about people in any of these terms. We are all people made in the image of God. Yes, some people have more material wealth than others. Yes, some people have a different skin color than others, have a different cultural practices than others. But it shouldn't be the main identifier of us. In fact, we share a lot of things in common. We share a whole lot in common. That's why what this nation was founded upon, by the way, it appeals to every group of people. That's why we have, go to a lot of these other countries, and you will find that the people that are there inside the boundaries of said countries, in many cases, it's not anywhere as ethnically or racially diverse as it is in places in this great country. This country's liberty, the things that we are built upon, the ideals that people have for their dreams and ambitions and how they want to pursue those things. America is appealing to all groups of people because it taps into a natural human desire. It taps into truth. And we've talked about this repeatedly on this program, that all men are created equal. All people are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Right? We are created in the image of God. We are made to be free. We're not made to be ruled over. Certainly, God instituted government, and we have to respect it. But it doesn't mean that we can't speak out against it, especially when it's doing something that's harmful to people, or that's tyrannical to people, or taking away their rights. Dare I say, killing the unborn, or teaching children, for example, that they should be a male, a boy when they're a girl, or a girl when they're a boy. These sorts of things need to be spoken out against and stopped. Abortion, of course, takes the life of a human being. These things need to be spoken out against and so forth. But at the core of America and what it is, what it was created to be, it's attractive to all groups of people because it appeals to our common, need, a truth that applies to all of us, that we were made by God and that we were created to be free. And so you have people that are going to flock here because of what it speaks universally to humanity. And so the questions then become, when you set up a nation's politics, how do you do this? How do you have your representative government? I think the founders did a great job. But over the course of time, laws have been passed that, may have had good intentions at some point, but in practicality, in reality, they still may have had their own problems. Maybe in some cases, people overcorrected for previous problems that existed in this country. Maybe some people were seeking to have instituted into statutes a political advantage that helped their political party over the others. I mean, there's a bazillion different ways of looking at this, but the bottom line is that the Supreme Court said that you can't do this any longer. You can't draw these districts this way. So I go back to the article here. Following the ruling, Senator Eric Schmitt, Republican, Missouri, issued a statement on X urging the Department of Justice to apply the Supreme Court decision across all states and, quote, use it to end illegally racially gerrymandered districts. This is what oversight is for. He wrote, the Civil Rights Division should enforce the Voting Rights Act as an anti-discrimination law, not as a racial redistricting mandate. The Constitution prohibits sorting Americans by race. DOJ, that's the Department of Justice, should act accordingly. In a letter to the department, Schmitt asked the DOJ to issue formal guidance implementing the ruling, review pending Section 2 redistricting litigation, and revisit districts drawn under that provision. The senator said California's new congressional map warrants review to determine whether litigation or public record evidence indicates that race was used as a factor in drawing lines. It would be ironic, wouldn't it, if both Virginia and California, both of them had their maps struck down for legal purposes because of rules that their states have put into place that they didn't follow in the case of Virginia, or in the case of California for violating this Supreme Court decision by using race in developing their maps. So continuing here, Schmitt says, I'm asking DOJ to identify all Section 2 redistricting cases, settlements, consent decrees, statements of interest, and remedial map positions that remain in effect. The old regime cannot be allowed to continue simply because no one has gone back and checked the files. In other words, he's saying, listen, this was not just a district in Louisiana. We know that other states have done this. Let's get them on the record. Let's identify what those districts are. Going back to the article, it says Harmeet Dillon, the DOJ's Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, said in response to Schmitt's post that the department is already taking action. So now, this goes from, this is me, again, not reading. It goes from a case in Louisiana that's going to change how their maps are going to be drawn. In fact, Louisiana has postponed their primary in order to fix their map problem and to be in compliance with the ruling of the Supreme Court. This is what Harmeet Dillon said on X in response to Senator Schmidt's post on X. Senator, we are on it. This is Justice Department under acting U.S. Attorney General Todd Blanche, or this Justice Department, continues to prioritize equal protection of the laws for all Americans, be it in employment, housing, education, and voting, all caps, taking her directive there from her boss, President Trump. Courts have held that the Voting Rights Act in certain circumstances allows states to take race into account when drawing electoral boundaries, but that electoral maps drawn explicitly based on race are unconstitutional. Writing for the majority on April 29th, Justice Samuel Alito wrote that compliance with Section 2 could not justify Louisiana's use of race-based redistricting. In sum, because the Voting Rights Act did not require Louisiana to create an additional majority-minority district, no compelling interest justified the state's use of race in creating SB 8, Alito wrote. That map is an unconstitutional gerrymander, and its use would violate the plaintiff's constitutional rights. Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry signed an executive order on April 30th, delaying the state's House primaries to allow time for lawmakers to redraw a new congressional map. So this could impact a lot of districts, my friends. We'll talk a little bit more about that after the break. I've got to take, my friends, here in a moment, a very quick timeout. Ever wish you had a whole team to help manage your financial life? That's the beauty of family office services at Full Suite Wealth. Their experienced advisors bring together everything from high-level investment management, private equity, private credit, option strategies, to complex legal needs, all customized for you. It's like having a family office just for you with people who know your story, your goals. If you're serious about planning for the long haul, check them out. Visit FullSuiteWealth.com today. That's FullSuiteWealth.com. Build your legacy, my friends. Secure your future. I have to take a quick time out here. You are listening to the home of conservative, not bitter talk. I am your host, the one and only, the ever so benevolent dictator behind the microphone, Todd Huff, back here in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. So, we have the Supreme Court case on Wednesday, the ruling that said, hey, you cannot use race as the primary factor in drawing these congressional districts. And then on Thursday, you have the Department of Justice beginning the process and, of course, being urged on by Senator Schmidt of Missouri to take that ruling and apply it to all these districts that could be impacted around the country. And so, again, the point here is that now this has opened up, the metaphorical can of worms here, because now you have the possibility of districts being redrawn in a midterm election year that could change who is represented in those districts. Now, it's not at this point known which of these districts are definitively protected or enabled by Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, or the result of that. So this would include any district that's the results of racially based political districting as the primary method for drawing a district. Now, there can certainly be minority or racially districts that are drawn that have a majority of minorities in it, that's not the problem. The problem is whether the districts were drawn specifically because of this interpretation of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. So the question is, how many does this impact? Now, if you go to this isn't Chat, this is Google's AI. It says this, so here's what it says. Racially focused districts. Majority minority districts as of 2024, 148 districts were identified as majority minority, comprising about 34% of the 435 total House districts. Now, again, this doesn't apply to all 48 of those. Now, it says here, Voting Rights Act influence. Only a subset of these districts, roughly 30 to 40, are specifically mandated or protected by the Voting Rights Act, while others are the results of organic demographic changes or political districting. So again, if these are just basically how the districts have been drawn, if this was not explicitly or clearly the result of a state trying to comply with racially redistricting or drawing the district lines, then it isn't going to be impacted. So there's most of the districts that are that are in this subset are not in the final group of districts that could be jeopardized here. But 30 to 40 seats could be. I don't know. We're going to see what this number turns out to be pretty quickly here. It's not going to take long to be able to identify this. Again, there's 435 districts. It's not like it's tens of thousands of things and all that, but they're going to have to find out or identify which that it is, and then these districts should have to be redrawn. The Supreme Court has ruled that you can't use race as the primary determining factor for where these districts are drawn. And so now if it's determined that these 30 or 40 or whatever it is, districts are drawn for, with that as the primary motivation or the primary rationale, then these are going to get struck down. And then the states where these are going to have to redraw. And of course, a lot of these are going to be in the South. I don't know what percentage of those that are going to have these, or how many, but the point is that this is typically going to cause Democrat districts to be redrawn. So we'll see where this comes into play. The South is where most of these are going to be. Key states include Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, South Carolina. Could be some in the Southwest, Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada. Could be some in other states. I don't know. New York, potentially Illinois, New Jersey. We'll see. We'll see where they come up, but I imagine most of these are going to be in the South, American South, the Southeast. And so what's going to happen? A lot of those are Republican legislatures who, of course, constitutionally, we know have the responsibility, the power to redistrict. And so they're going to be ordered by the court to redistrict, potentially, or as a next step, guidance from the Department of Justice and compliance with this court ruling. And you're going to have districts that, at least some districts that are blue, that are going to be redrawn, because it doesn't just affect the district that is at question, because you're going to have to redraw it, which means you're going to have to change other districts. So then now these states have a constitutional mandate to redistrict. We've gone from states having the option of redistricting, who have been led and inspired and pressured by Trump to redistrict. Some of them have taken it up. The most recent would be Florida, who did it very... By the way, did you see the lunatic representative when the vote was held on redistricting, drawing the new maps, actually passing those in the House, in the Florida State House. Did you see? Saw there was a representative from Jacksonville. She took to the the House floor with the megaphone and was just screaming into the megaphone. I got the soundbite. I've thought about playing it. It's just going to sound like chaos over your speakers, but that's out there if you've not seen that. So anyway, we've got potential here for major problems at the metaphorical 11th hour for Democrats as we move to the midterm elections. This by the way, the current breakdown of the House of Representatives, I mean, it is razor thin, my friends. I'll tell you, the Senate is 53 Republicans. Now, redistricting, of course, does not matter to the Senate because the Senate is for the entire state. There's no districts. You have 2 senators from your whole state. Wherever your state boundaries are, that's where you can vote if you live within those boundaries, and that's where your senator will be elected from. You have 2 of those. So senators aren't impacted, but just to give you a breakdown of Congress's makeup, there's 53 Republicans, only 45 Democrats, but there's 2 independents who caucus with the Democrats. So it's 53-47 majority Republican in the Senate. Could you imagine what that would be if we did not change the Constitution and we still had the state legislatures elect our senators? We would have probably close to 60, I would think, Republican senators. Regardless, House of Representatives, our current breakdown there is 217 Republicans, 212 Democrats, 5 vacancies. So Republicans have a razor-thin margin here. In fact, technically, the only reason they have the majority now is because there's vacancies, because you need 218 to have a majority out of the 435 seats. But since only 430 of those seats are currently filled, they only need 215 seats, but they only have 217. So you can see why this matters so much in a midterm election year. So we'll see where this goes, but this could cause massive, massive problems when all the dust settles from all the redistricting that has happened based upon states taking it upon themselves. Not Indiana, of course. He dropped the ball in a major way. But when you factor in the states who did redistrict because of that, and states are going to have to redistrict because of this, there could be a massive shift towards Republican districts. We'll see where this ends up, though, my friends. Let's talk about something really quickly that's important. That's your money. You worked hard for it, but is it working hard for you and what you believe in? Or is it working for the opposite of what you believe in? At 48 Financial, they specialize in biblically responsible investing. That means they screen out companies that do not align with your faith, your values, and they'll help create a plan that fits your goals and purpose. So they'll show you how your current investments, what you have today, stack up against your values. Are they in alignment, partial alignment, or are they absolutely against your values? 48financial.com/Todd. That's where you can take this quick and easy assessment. 48financial.com/Todd. Do it now. It's quick and easy. 48 Financial, helping you align your money with your mission. Quick time out for me, my friends. Back in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. Third and final segment of today. Final segment of the week. Today is May 1st. Time flies when you're having fun. I'll tell you something else that's fun. That's listening to an AOC interview. She was interviewed, caught by reporters from TMZ, or a reporter from TMZ, and she was asked questions about running, of course, for president of the United States, which, of course, she's potentially going to be a nominee, which is wild to think about, by the way, that she's going to be a potential presidential candidate. But she's being asked questions by TMZ about sorry here. It's in my ear, but not in your ear yet. So she's asked by TMZ some questions about the presidency. Well, I'll let you listen to this, but there's one question in particular I want you to listen to her response. It reminds me of something I've said on here, jokingly. I think she's serious about it, but nonetheless, here's AOC being asked questions about presidential politics and that sort of thing. I think she's outside the Capitol building. I'm not entirely sure. I can't really tell from the video, at least the part that I've seen. But here she is answering these questions, and I want to I want to share one of I want to talk about one of these answers in particular. Here you go.
Hey, if you could click your fingers and Tucker Carlson is president instead of Donald Trump, would you do it?
I don't know. I don't think so, but it's kind of a toss-up. I'm not really sure.
Okay, last thing then. What do you think we're going to have first? Are we going to have a female president first or a gay president?
Oh, well, we don't know if we've already had a gay president.
Hey, that's true.
I think there.
She says we don't know if we've already had a gay president. You know, I've jokingly said on this program, because this is how, going back to identity politics, how the left uses identity to get people to do things that maybe they wouldn't do normally. And it's become a popular thing to say, oh, we want... in fact, I remember a scene from The Office when Daryl Philbin, who Michael referred to as Reg, is that right? Regis? I forget the final nickname that he gave him. But anyway, Daryl Philbin said he wants to vote. He said, I wanted to live long enough to vote for the first black president. And he's like, and then I didn't realize how easy that would be. This was in the days of Obama being president, of course. And so he said, I want to live long enough to vote for all the types of presidents. The first, female, the first gay president, starts listing them. But this is how some people think. They think that this is just about America progressing to a point where she is ready to elect somebody who has something about them that historically has not been accepted or whatever over the course of time. I've always said on this program, it's a wonderful thing that America has gotten to the point that we have voted for a black president, but we shouldn't vote for someone simply because they're black or because they're not black or because they're white or because they're not white or because whatever, right? This is just kind of common sense in my mind and my way of thinking here. But she speculates that we don't know that we've not had America's first gay president. I've said in the past, we don't know if America's had a transgender president. Did anybody actually take the time to go back and scrub the archives or to even ask him at the time of his service? James K. Polk, was he? I'm not picking on James Polk. I'm just saying we don't know. No one ever asked these presidents how they identify. We don't know. So she says we may have had America's first gay president already. I would love, and I've thought about this. Can you imagine? I want to see I want to see a journalist ask Trump. I want to see a journalist who says AOC was asked about whether or not America would elect a female president first or a gay president. And she said that we don't know that America's not had its first gay president. With that being said, Mr. President, fill in the blank here. Are you potentially a closet homosexual? I just listen. She's the one that's set this up. I'm just here as the host. I've played this in my mind, and I just think I just would want to hear his answer. You know how Trump. Not that to be clear, I think that this is crazy, but listen, this is the way that it works. I just want to hear Trump's answer from a purely entertainment perspective. It reminds me of again, as most things do, either The Office or Seinfeld. This reminds me of both an Office and a Seinfeld. It reminds me of Michael Scott, who was offended that people said he was gay because he says, I'm so the opposite of that. And it reminds me of the Outing episode of Seinfeld, where a journalist from NYU thinks that George and Jerry are homosexuals in a relationship. It's the episode where they keep saying, not that there's anything wrong with that. They're desperately trying to make sure that she doesn't portray. Anyway, it's just, we've reached a point. We've been here for a long time, but the craziness of politics, these are the things that matter to people out there casting ballots, which is appalling and terrifying, especially when we have such important things at stake. But I just think it'd be interesting to hear Trump's response to that. I'm out of time, though. I got to go. SDG.